You know, your skin is way more than just a protective layer. Seriously, think of it like a living billboard, always broadcasting messages about what's going on deep inside your body. It's this incredible communication system, and in this explainer, we're going to learn how to read its signals.
Right. So when your body is fighting a big battle against an infection, that whole conflict doesn't always stay hidden. A lot of the time, the evidence just erupts right onto the surface. So the big question is, what are these rashes and bumps and spots actually trying to tell us about what's happening inside?
So let's meet the main character in our story today, the skin. And it is not just some simple covering. Get this, it's our body's largest organ. It makes up about 15% of our total body weight. So just think of it as this complex, multi-layered battlefield where the signs of an internal fight can become totally visible.
Okay, so how do we make sense of it all? Well, when you have what's called a systemic infection, meaning it's affecting your whole body, the way it shows up on your skin isn't random. It actually follows one of three very distinct pathways. And understanding these three is the absolute key to decoding the message.
And here they are, the three pathways we're going to dive into. First up, we have direct invasion, which is pretty much what it sounds like. The bad guy is right there in the skin. Second, a specific reaction, which is kind of like a calling card for a particular germ. And third, a general alarm, where the skin just gets caught in the crossfire of this huge body-wide immune response. Let's start with direct invasion.
All right, pathway 1. This is honestly the most straightforward of the bunch. This is when the actual infectious agent, the virus or the bacteria that's causing the illness, physically travels to the skin and just sets up shop. The technical term for this is direct involvement. A good way to think of it is like a criminal returning to the scene of the crime. The microbe that made you sick on the inside, it's the very same one that's now causing that visible thing on your skin. A perfect, and I mean perfect example that most of us know is chickenpox. You feel awful all over because the virus is systemic, right? But those classic itchy little blisters pop up because that same virus is physically there, active, right in your skin. Now, for a much more dramatic example, take a look at this. What you're seeing here is a tuberculosis infection that started deep inside the body. We're talking in a lymph node or even a bone, and it has literally pushed its way up to the surface. It's a condition called scrofuloderma. And this just illustrates the concept perfectly. This quote from the source material calls it contiguous involvement, which basically means the skin is affected because it's directly touching an infected part underneath. It's a true physical invasion from below. But direct invasion isn't always so simple. A single disease can show up with a bunch of different faces. And to see this in action, we've got to look at syphilis, which is famously called the Great Pretender. You're about to see how one infection can look wildly different on the skin over time. So in the secondary stage, maybe a few months after the initial infection, you get phase number 1, these non-itchy kind of coppery red bumps, and they characteristically pop up on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. But wait, in that exact same stage, the infection can put on phase number 2. In moist areas of the body, it can form these raised, almost wart-like growths. Wild, right? Same infection, same stage of the illness, but a totally different look. And the deception does not stop there. Years, sometimes decades later, the tertiary stage can cause these destructive, bumpy lesions on the face. So, now you can see exactly why they call it the Great Pretender. 3 completely different faces, all caused by the same bacteria, sitting right there in the skin.
All right, let's move on to our second pathway. Now, in this case, the germ isn't actually in the skin. Instead, it's hanging out somewhere else in the body, maybe your throat, and it's pumping out toxins. These toxins then travel through the bloodstream and trigger a very, very specific kind of rash. This is called a specific reaction, for a good reason. The rash is so distinctive, it's like a diagnostic fingerprint. A doctor can often just look at the skin, recognize that specific pattern, and know exactly which bacteria and which toxin is causing the trouble somewhere else in the body. It's a dead giveaway.
And the poster child for this has got to be the bullseye rash of Lyme disease. The bacteria itself is spreading through the body, sure, but the skin's reaction creates this unmistakable target. I mean, when a doctor sees that, Lyme disease is the first thing that jumps into their head, a perfect, specific reaction.
And what's really fascinating is how different toxins produce such different reactions. On the left, you have the toxins from the strep bacteria that cause scarlet fever. They create this fine red rash that feels like sandpaper.
But on the right, totally different toxins from a staph bacteria can cause something called staphylococcal scalded skin syndrome, where the top layer of skin literally blisters and peels off. Two different toxins, two very specific and very different skin reactions.
And that brings us to our final pathway, the body's general alarm. This is what happens when the immune system gets so revved up fighting an infection that the skin basically becomes collateral damage. It's not a direct invasion, it's not a reaction to a specific toxin, it's just a sign of system-wide inflammation, a total freakout.
So this one is called a non-specific reaction, because the same skin condition can be triggered by a whole bunch of different things. You know the best way to think about it? It's like a building's fire sprinkler system. A little fire in one office might set off the sprinklers on the entire floor, soaking everything, not just the fire. The skin rash is like that sprinkler system, a generalized response to a threat that could be coming from almost anywhere. And this is where things get really tricky for doctors. Let's just take one type of nonspecific reaction, erythema nodosum. The list of things that can trigger it is huge. I mean, it can be caused by bacterial infections like strep, fungal infections, even viral infections like Epstein-Barr. One single type of rash with dozens and dozens of potential culprits.
And this is what that general alarm looks like in real life. These are the painful, deep, reddish bumps of erythema nodosum, and they usually show up on the shins. So seeing this tells a doctor that the immune system is on high alert, but it doesn't point to one specific cause. It's a really important clue that kicks off a much broader investigation to find out what's really going on.
So after looking at all three of these pathways, it's pretty clear, right? Our skin is an absolutely incredible diagnostic tool. It gives us these vital clues about what's happening inside our bodies, but only if we know how to read the signs.
So what's the big takeaway here? Well, when a new rash shows up while you're sick, it is telling a story. And we have to ask, is this a direct invasion, like with chickenpox? Is it a specific reaction, like the bullseye from Lyme disease? Or is it a general alarm, like erythema nodosum? Answering that question is what sends doctors down the right path to figure things out.
In the end, our skin is so much more than a barrier. It's a diary. It's this visible record of our battles, our exposures, our internal health. It's a powerful reminder that what happens on the inside rarely stays there. So the next time you look in the mirror, it's worth asking yourself, what story is my skin telling today?